everybody. Welcome to another exciting, fun-filled, expeditious episode of Radiorama. And today we have a large German-made Telefunken stereo system. And I can't remember the model name. It's like 6 something. But we'll find out soon enough when I flip it around. We went and actually picked this up in Marin, like it matters. But when I got it home, I was like, this sure looks familiar. And I realized I have the same radio. It's just that I took the legs off of mine years ago because you can see it's kind of a tall, skinny guy. But I have the blonde version, and it belonged to my friend Robert. And he gave that to me years ago, and I'm not going to get rid of it because it means a lot to me. I've got it plugged in. I was told the radio worked, but the record player doesn't work. And I'm not seeing any pilot lights. It could just mean they're all burnt out. Let's see if the record player will turn on, or at least well, obviously the record player is getting power, so there's nothing wrong with the power getting to the unit part. But there's nothing happening in the amp. I'm pretty sure that probably what's happening is that the fuse has either come loose or it's blown or something else, but we won't know until I get this turned around and get the back off of it and take a look inside. All right, for those of you who are like, I have to have a model number, where there's your model number. It is a Telefunken Hymnus 5438 MX Hi-Fi FM stereo. And tube-wise, what do we have here? ECL86. We have 4 of those. I believe ECL86 has the equivalent of 2. Is it ECC? I can't. It's EF85. I can't remember. There's an 85 related numbered tube that I think they used those in automotive stereo systems. But these ECL86s, those are output tubes, and there's the equivalent of 2 tubes per tube. So this has got push-pull audio. So even though there's 4 tubes, it's doing the work of double that. Sorry, my tongue got twisted a little bit there for some reason. Now, it's got this strange back that kind of curves in like that. It also has an additional power outlet here that was probably for if you got the tape player option, which is not present on this model. You could either order it with it, or you would order it later after you bought it. And it just has FM stereo, and it says that probably means it has a built-in multiplex adapter, because this is old enough where you needed to have that. In fact, it says MX. I think that probably means it's 5438 with a multiplexer unit for FM stereo. The record player is probably also stereo, but there was a lot of these earlier ones where they would come with AM and FM, but FM would be mono, but the record player would be stereo. So there's this weird era where stereo kind of came in bursts and fits, and before it finally became just like standardized. Here it is with the back removed, and that, I believe, that's got to be the stereo decoder. When I came in here, this was pretty loose, but I don't think that would have. That's the decoder power. That wouldn't have anything to do with this not powering up. There's the fuse, and oftentimes those fuses, either from fatigue or from bad connections, can go bad. What I'm really happy about that I'm seeing up here is there's an awful lot of capacitors that are using plastic for the cases. And those are generally okay. The ones that are not going to be okay are ones like this, where it's just a paper capacitor with wax sealant. Those I wouldn't trust. I'm also curious, maybe this switch isn't turning on. Sometimes these switches, that's the switch right there, can get stuck. And let's see if it's moving. No, it seems to be moving. That's on and off. Let's see. Here's off. and on. So it's sliding back and forth like it should. I'm going to take this fuse out. Oops, I just dropped it down in the cabinet. Where'd it go? Anyway, I'll find the fuse and I'll test it, see if it's any good. Fuse is fine, so that's just a little bit concerning that this is not at all powering up, period. It could just be that maybe that fuse had a bad connection, but I'm going to go ahead and get, sorry I'm filming portrait mode, I'm going to get the power cord and see if there's anything else that'll happen. Well, she is dead. Like nothing is happening, so I need to figure out why it's doing nothing. Because that's very concerning to have something that's completely dead before you even start on it, so diagnostics are called for. Okay, well, I decided to temporarily hook up a alligator clip, and it's making some really nasty noises, so I'm not going to power that up again. Something else is happening here, and that's going to require taking the chassis out. Now, one thing I did notice is that it seems like I guess they're all right. I was getting ready to say I thought maybe the rectifiers were shot, but they're cool to the touch. Anyway, I sure as hell don't want to risk blowing shit up, especially not with this guy, so I'm gonna have to take it out. Yippee! And I found the problem. The problem is that the selenium rectifiers are shot, and so I need to make a new. Interestingly enough, there's two of these in here. It's like they built two of these things in one. There's two sets of electrolytics. There are the equivalent of 8 output tubes. So I'm like, what kind of weird ass engineering is this supposed to be about? But long story short, all of that is bad, and that's going to short out the transformer if I don't replace it. Here's my janky jury-rigged. It's a dual bridge rectifier, because when I looked at these closer, the negatives and positives are all stuck together. So I'm going to plug it up and get my metered variac to make sure it's not going to go kablooey. Here is the possible outcome of this exciting thing. So let me go over here and bring it up slowly. It's not drawing much so far. I see pilot lights. I don't know, I'm scared. So far so good. I did measure good, healthy looking B+ on the two electrolytics. There's one here and one there. I'm just gonna let those sit for a little while. And transformer seems nice and happy. I hope I didn't blow it up. I swear to God. Welcome to day 2 of working on the Telefunken hymnus. I'm not sure what that means, but anyway, this is a case where it pays to be an engineer or somebody who is more technically proficient than someone like me, because I should have looked at the schematic if I had any questions. And this already had its own had its own schematic with it. And first look at it, you can see there's just a single rectifier bridge. So what I realized after talking to my friend on the phone was it's not like this is 2 rectifiers stuck together like I thought. No, it is 2 rectifiers stuck together. But for some reason when I first saw this, I was like, oh, for some reason this set has 2 rectifier bridges in it. In reality, no, it does not. There's 2 rectifiers inside of each one of these. So you put them together, that makes a rectifier bridge. So stupidly, what I did yesterday was I made dual rectifier bridges and connected them together. And that was okay, sort of for B+, but definitely not okay for these guys off the output transformers. So, in fact, I don't think those have anything to do with the output transformer. This was probably our incoming and outgoing AC. So, I'm going to take this off and reconnect it just with the 4 diodes, which would make a rectifier bridge. These diodes can handle up to an amp, which is way, way more than this thing will ever get to. So we're good there. Part of me is like, man, this thing is sloppy. Why don't I just make another one? Because they're cheap enough, and I have another one of these guys sitting here, and maybe I don't even need to do that. I wonder if I can just, I don't know. It's time to make another bridge. I lied. Of course I did the sloppiest thing possible. I just cut the additional bridge off. I can use that for something else later. But I'm going to bring this over to the set and see. I sure hope to God the thing works. Otherwise, I don't know. Stuff like this makes me feel like an idiot. Like, you know, sometimes I feel good about myself. Like, I know how to work on things. And then things like this come along. It's like, no, you don't. You really don't. I barely know what I'm doing on this stuff. All right, let's go try it. It's testing time. And I'm going to be watching this like a hawk. Power on. All right, come on. I've been having a really strange problem with my Variac lately. The set doesn't seem to be drawing anything. I'm not sure if it's on. Hold on a minute. Stupid me, it wasn't even on. So, what I want to do is just turn it on a little bit and observe DC B+. That's not much at all. And what is that up to? Oh, it's only 30 volts. That's probably not drawing much of anything. And not enough to do anything. I'll bring it up to like 50. This is why my channel doesn't have that many views. That's because I do boring shit like this. All right, no DC. How can there be no DC? Okay, well maybe very little DC. Could it be that I connected this wrong? Well, I have checked my wiring on my rectifier and it's fine. But something's very unhappy. And I'm also getting immediate hum through the audio. So my other assumption is that we've got a bad electrolytic capacitor in here. So I'm going to, I guess I'm just being lazy. I should just go ahead and replace the electrolytic capacitors because they're there and I can keep on guessing. But they have to be replaced anyway, so we might as well take those out of the equation. Just because I want to satisfy my curiosity, I'm going to test one of these 100 microfarad caps. Whoa. That is a very, very unhappy noise. Jesus. That cap is... That thing is hard shorted. I've never heard that thing grumble like that. It's like... Rum, 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 rum. So, yeah. That's bad. Went ahead and got those first 2 replaced. And while I'm here, even though I don't really want to do it, but I should, and I'll just feel better about myself, I'll replace these 3. A bunch of crap in the way, but I'll deal with it. I'm used to these German sets. I tend to really pack things in here, but at least there's not as much to replace. We got a lot of ceramic disc capacitors or capacitors that have got plastic for the filling or whatever, the insulating material. So they're not very leaky, they're not going to leak. That's not to say there isn't some in here, these guys. You see anything like this that has this kind of chalky look to it on the ends? That's good old-fashioned paper film capacitors, or paper and foil capacitors, and those will leak just as bad as their American cousins. This too appears to be old paper caps. They're just huge. In fact, I think the one I previously pointed at is also probably, I don't know, it's hard to tell. I'll have to look at it closer. Could be plastic, I don't know. But yeah, I'm going to replace the rest of these capacitors and then return it to see if it's going to either live or die. Alrighty, they're all replaced. So now I can feel confident that it can't be the electrolytics anymore because they're all new. So let me plug it in. Alright, it's showtime. First of all, there's some good news. It's not humming. It was humming like mad before, so. And at 50 volts, it's only drawing about 13 watts. So that's nothing. So I think I could probably give it a little more juice. Now it's only drawing about 20 watts. And let's see. It's hard to see in these tubes. Nope, we got filament on that one. All right. Don't have enough juice to get it to do anything. It's still only about 67 volts. I already hear it, and it's only up to 88 volts.
Solo, no mojo, I bounce back, no pogo, unhappy, no new brands, no logos. Money on my juggler, natural hustler. Think I need a smuggler up in Russia. You could be my butler, shine my cutler. Shout out to Oyenda, that's the good.
Quit playing games with
All right, so good. We went from like almost blowy uppy to now working. It's always a good thing when things work. Here's my theory. I think when we picked it up, there was a kind of a younger guy who owned it, and he had it in a warehouse. And I'd bet you anything that they probably had this thing on, and they forgot it was on, because if you close up the top, you can't tell it's on. And they just probably left it on for days. And that eventually took out the tired electrolytic, and that's why it probably shorted like that. Well, now that the excitement is over, and we know it works, or I know it works, then it's time to come to the more pedestrian, unexciting things. Which is looking at this more closely to see exactly what needs to be replaced. It's not a small amount either. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 caps just in this little pocket here. And then over here we have, excuse me, 1, 2, 3, 4. Looks like the ones that are under here are plastic. Okay, it's a decent amount. It's not a horrific amount, but a lot of these things, like the issue is just getting at them, because you know it looks easy at first, but then you start getting in there and like, man, there's like really not a lot of room to work, and it just requires being patient. And since I'm kind of like I don't know, tired, just spent the whole last 2 hours cleaning up the yard, I'm going to just replace capacitors, and it's easy to do. All you have to do usually on these things is just read the values. For example, this says, it's a little obscure, it looks like it says 68,000 puffs, or 6,800 picofarads rather, 6,800 picofarads. Do a little bit of math, that equals 0.0068 microfarads. I don't have any of those. I have .0047. That's totally fine. You can get away with that kind of stuff here. This says .01 microfarad. I'm trying to see if I can focus in on that. This writing is so difficult to read on some of these. That's why I need to get reading glasses. So these two are .01 microfarads, and you just replace them with like-minded capacitors. But we're going to replace it with those nice modern yellow capacitors that never go bad. Or at least I'll be gone by the time they go bad, and there won't be anyone around to blame me for anything. These look like they could be important. They look like... No, they're not across the line caps, I don't think. The cross the line caps are probably somewhere else. Probably up top closer to the rectifier. But I could be wrong. So I'll just start replacing these one by one, time at a time. Because it's a job that has to be done, and it's no fun, but perfect for evenings like this, where I'm now just in the mood to sit back and take it easy. I was about to go head out and work on the stereo, but Mr. Pickles is sitting here. And I just had to say hello to him. Anyway, we got him and his sister. A couple of years ago, they were fosters, and no one wanted to adopt them for months and months and months. And now they're our cats, and they're just as sweet as can possibly be. I'm sure he's annoyed at me right now. You okay, Pickles? His sister's outside. Anyway, on to radios. Okay, now that we're done with the cats, it's time to get back to the Telefunken. And there's quite a few old paper caps that still need to be replaced. These guys, again, when you look at the end of them, they look kind of chalky like that. That's paper. On the other hand, and it takes a little bit of time working on these to recognize it, but these, on the other hand, are not. These are plastic film caps. You can generally tell because the ends will be kind of, instead of chalk, it's like a clear plastic. These, and I don't think there's any here. There's quite a few underneath that were also plastic film caps, and you can leave those alone. This is my homemade rectifier holder. What I did was I actually drilled a hole. Well, I didn't drill a hole. There was already a hole here. I drilled a hole through this plastic case here. It's basically going through the same bolt holes as the original electrolytics here. Not the electrolytics, what am I talking about? The original rectifiers. And I filled it in with glue because it's not a great thing to have fully exposed B plus sitting there, even though it's all over the place here. I just did it because, well, it just looked neater. And there's no real, I don't know, it's just a good way to mount it for me. And on most of these capacitors, they will again just have their values written somewhere. What is that supposed to say? 330 picofarads? What does the other one say? 330 picofarads. How could that possibly be? Usually it's, I don't know. Let me look at the schematic to see if that's really the case, because that is tiny. That can't be 330 picofarads. I think it's got to be more something like 3300, which would be like 003. Yeah, they certainly are. You're 330 picofarads. When you see this MMF like that, that just, in other words, for microfarads, or you could translate that to picofarads. But here we go. This is one of the transformers. Here's the other one in the same thing. We've got 300. Well, where is the other one at, actually? It's around here somewhere. Anyway, that's all I need to see is just one of those. That is 330 picofarads. And luckily, I have a whole bunch of those guys. Let's see. What is this? 1 kV, 330 picofarads. Perfect. So I'll replace those and then flip it over and resume the drudgerous task of replacing the rest of the remaining paper capacitors. I got them 2 capacitors replaced, and I flipped it over. I realized I'd done most of it last night, but there's still a few annoying ones that are stuck up in awkward corners. But I figured, you know what? I'm going to take a break from the electronics and work on the cabinet, because it certainly needs some work. Initially it looked great, but then I noticed some pretty deep scratches, very noticeable scratches in the top, including a few deep ones that I'm not sure if I'll be able to remove. These look like they're more recent. Then again, the people that we bought it from said that it was buried under a bunch of stuff in a house somewhere, so maybe it's a hoarder situation. So who knows? Had a little bit of abuse, but I am going to go over it with this, which is my mechanical buffer. And I'm going to use a product that I've been using for a real long time called Novus number 2. I keep on calling it Novus number 2. It's Novus 2. It is a plastic polish that they make in different numbers. It depends on like the severity of the scratching. I use number 2 because it just seems like it, I don't know, happy medium. The number 3 stuff just looks like a cleaner. Anyway, I buy it in the big jug like that, and then I'll start this off generally on low. If you crank it up all the way, it'll just fling the stuff everywhere, and you'll be real sad. Then I'll just kind of like rub it in a little bit, and then start off. And then I'll just slowly start gradually bringing up the speed. And just do that. It can take a long time to do this. Sometimes you can spend over an hour just getting one scratch off, especially if it's really bad. But that's why I started using mechanical buffer. It's a lot quicker, and probably won't be able to remove all those scratches, but I'll at least be able to make them at least fade into the distance a little bit, maybe recede a little bit. Well, let me show you the difference here. So no doubt the scratches are still there. I can see them if I look at this really closely. They're not as obvious versus like these. That's previously what that looked like, and that was just after a few minutes of just hanging out on this one panel. And granted, you won't be able to feel this through the video or the screen, but it also makes this a lot smoother. Like that's practically like glass, because when these came out of the factory, they had this extremely shiny piano finishes on them. I have a friend who's born in Tasmania and then lived in France and Germany. He told me that when this finish came out on some of these German sets, they would show you how wonderful and great the finish was by putting a cigarette out on it. I'm not sure if that's true or not, but this man's like 80 years old, so I have no reason to doubt what he's saying is true. It's one of those things you're like, I sure hope it's true, because that sounds awful. Cool. Yes, madam, I can assure you the finish is perfect. Watch this as I put my cigarette out on it. I guess you couldn't do that today, but I will continue polishing the top of this thing. I think the front is all right. It's usually the top, because people come in, they put their keys on it, they put their crap on it, or they put flower pots on it, or whatever. Okie dokie, I've got everything all buffed out and polished out. I really wish I could have put this outside in the sun so you could see this better, because it does look spectacular, but it's too heavy for me. I can't lift it myself, and I've learned as I get older that it's really stupid to lift things if you think it's going to hurt your back, so I don't do that anymore. I got it both inside and out, and I used Old English on some of the dry looking areas. Oops, I forgot to do it here. You see how this is kind of like dried out looking? Well, this Old English works pretty well at kind of cleaning up and bringing stuff back. There's a light version of it too, and you can use it on things like I don't know, the lighter wood in here. Like you don't want to stain that. But sometimes I'll use this like when there's corners that are like nicked a little bit or something. Just needs to kind of get some of that color back. I think there's a little bit of a chip back here. I'm going to try to glue that back down. I don't want that to get worse. It's looking pretty good. I even did the little stand here with little spindly legs. It's weird seeing this. I've had the same model in my house for 15 years, and the legs are up there somewhere. Actually, I think there they are. There's my legs hanging out right there. But mine's sitting down on the ground, and it's just weird seeing it this tall like this. Alright, well, the next thing I want to do is remove the record player, and in order to do that, you have to remove one of the covers. And then you can pull the record player out for the top and pull the cabling and all that other stuff. And I looked at this, it's like, look how many speakers are in here. There's like 4 here, that means there's 4 on the other side, that there's 8 in here. And that one's huge. I don't think that's a 6x9. That looks like a 12 by 6 or a 12 by 8 or something. That's a massive speaker. And I'm guessing that's a mid-range, and here's another side firing mid-range, and here's a tweeter. So no wonder it sounded pretty good. I mean, I was wondering about that myself. Like the one in my house sounds really good too. So I've never taken the back cover off of mine though. All right, when it comes to some of these German record players, well, I don't know, that's a very generic term. When it comes to this particular record player, which I've seen a lot of the German stereos, once you remove the screws, sometimes there's these little kind of like springy pieces of metal that kind of click it in place. And oftentimes you can just get your hand in there and push in and it'll come right out. But if not, sometimes you can just kind of like lean in and push in with a screwdriver. Then it'll lift right out of there. All right. I was in such a hurry to make sure that you all heard that stupid song playing in the background. It's one of the stupid old country songs that I liked as a kid. The one that goes, humdinger, humdinger. Anyway, if you get into situations like this, you know, where I previously had it setting, this is where I need a rotisserie, but my stupid jury-rigged way of doing it is I'll get a towel so you can rest the front end of it, because that's going to be okay. And kind of like double it up a little bit. It's nice and cushiony. Then I lean this up against something solid, that spool there. Make sure not to rest it on anything too delicate, and you know, it's not like there's a lot of weight on that. And then I can get to all these capacitors that were previously almost impossible to get at, because now I'm looking down at them versus up above at them. You know what I mean? Looking underneath versus down. It's a lot easier on the neck. It's crap like that you learn after working on these things for so many years. But, you know, like I said, the proper way to do it would be to go buy one of those radio rotisseries. We even have one of those at the museum that someone said you should take home and use it. And it's like, nah, I'm okay. I'm just used to doing it this way, and it's okay. It is me, Count Chocula. I love to leave shit. Welcome to day number 3 of working on the Telefunken stereo. And today, what I did early in the morning is I went ahead and ran a stereo cable through the stereo tape deck pickup here. And these European DIN connectors, sometimes you have to look them up online to see like where stuff actually connects, and sometimes they can be tricky. But the right and left channels are on the tape player input side, the blue and the red. In this case, it'll be red and white on my cable. And then the ground, which is yellow on the cable, goes to the ground, which is this connection here that runs as the ground, not only for that, but for the record player connection. You only know if you get it right if you test it and it works. Sometimes they reconfigured the DIN stuff, and I don't know. It's not my favorite connection, but it works. But before I do anything else, I'm probably going to clean the contacts that are in the tone controls, the volume controls, and all that. And you can see on the tone controls, the stuff is just completely open. And so, and this is moving kind of jammed up, so I think I might need to put some lubricant on the shaft. That one turns okay. That one's fine. And that's turning the way it should. This one, on the other hand, is stuck up. So maybe I can put a little stuff here. Come on now. All right, let's see if that soaks down in there a little bit. Yep, already that's much better, but I'll probably heat that up a little bit with the soldering iron and put some fresh oil in there. Meanwhile, it looks like the volume controls have the volume control has their wipers open at the bottom. So I can go in here, flush those out. Sometimes I'll do it twice, just to make sure. It's nothing worse than getting these all buttoned up again, only to find that they're jammed or dirty. Same goes for these contacts for all the buttons. And I'm using a proper electronics cleaner. You want something that'll evaporate, not leave through the phone, evaporate and not leave a residue. Sorry about that. And then you want to work these in, make sure there's like hair in there. Get these all working well. I don't seem to remember this having much of any contact issues, I think because it was closed up inside the case. Not a lot of opportunity for dust to get in there. So let me again put a little oil here and heat that up a little bit so I can get it to work a little, or move a little bit smoothly, more smoothly. And you can just like do this, hold your, well, first of all, get the solder off the tip and just hold that there for a few minutes, and what'll happen is that'll kind of melt and loosen up the old grease, and then the new stuff will kind of flow in and it'll loosen up a little bit more. Well, unbeknownst to me, the tuning condenser for AM and shortwave is stuck. And they almost always get stuck right here. And so what I'm doing is I'm putting a little oil, the zoom spout oil, where it needs to soak in, because I'm going to have to heat this up. And this is tricky. You do not want to get it on the tuning string, because if you've ever had to restring one of these Grundigs or Telefunkens, you will not forget that experience. So I'm just going to gently warm this up until some of that old grease softens up a little bit, then I'll try to work it, because right now it's not tuning, period. Well, I've decided I'm going to let the tuning stuff here sit and marinate in PB Blaster. I put a little bit on those contacts, or on those bearings. Likewise, probably need to use the same stuff on the record player. I started work on it yesterday just to see what was going on. And at first I thought this was your typical Voices Music licensed changer, but then I think it is, but they've done something a little bit different here. They have a belt-driven pulley coming off the motor in addition to the idler pulley here. And yesterday, when I looked at it, the belt, it seems like it works, but it's also a little tired. And so I'm going to look in my supply of belts to see if I have any that'll fit. And if not, I'm going to go off to the hardware store and find a replacement belt. Well, despite the belt not looking great, it actually is gripping pretty good. Like, I can't even hardly slow that down with my finger. I've got the C clip underneath that tape, if you're wondering what that is. Hearing a little bit of a bump. I think probably the idler wheel has a little low spot in it, so I'll probably sand that smooth a little bit. But more importantly, I need to get the changer mechanism up and working, because right now it's frozen just as bad as the tuning condenser is on the tuner. Now, the first thing in order to get this freed up is we want to make sure that the cog that drives everything, which is right here, it's this huge round thing that's in the center of the changer mech, that needs to free up, because that drives everything. And on the German ones, they almost always get seized up because, again, whatever grease they're using solidifies and turns to a glue. Sometimes you have to be pretty aggressive with these and use some heat to free them up, and that's probably what I'm going to do in just a minute. This is after about 15 minutes. This one was especially stuck up, but what I do is I reach my hand underneath here and I carefully grab a hold of the cog and I spin it. It's now starting to really free up, and what you can also do is I put oil in there and I gently push this up and down. And what that does is that makes sure and gets, new oil in there. I don't want to take this apart, because as soon as you start taking these things apart, if you get anything bent at all, it won't work. And so now it turns really easy, and you want to make sure you flush all that old crap out of there, because otherwise when it cools down it'll just solidify again. But the fact that I can do this and mop up that oil, and like it's pretty clean, that shows me that I've gotten all the old gunk out of there. So spend a little extra time here, and that it'll save you a lot of heartache down the road, because this cog is what drives everything, and if that is not moving like absolutely very easily, like all you're doing is you're asking the belt and the idler pulley to work that much harder, And so that is a good start. The rest of it needs to be freed up too. Okay, so now I'm able to kind of like start cycling the mechanism. I do this a whole bunch initially just to kind of like make sure that everything that moves is going to get good and seated in with the new lubricant. And you can just kind of observe it working. Make sure that everything's turning all right. Initially it's getting a little bit stuck, but the more I do this, the smoother it becomes. Sounds a little bit different, but then again, it's got a belt drive, and I'm not used to those. You can also use this in manual mode. It's probably what a lot of people will do. These are 33. Still hearing a little bit of a faint bump, 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 but probably when the record's playing, no one's going to hear it because I can barely hear it here. So I'm not too worried about that. Maybe I'll sandpaper it down just a little bit because I haven't put the snap ring back on for the platter. I want to see if it's actually going to cycle through with the record. All right, let's try. See if it'll drop the record. Crappy record too, because I don't want to play that much of it. That sounds way too fast. That's not good, unless I'm just hearing it funny. That's Gene Autry, and his voice sounds awfully high. Well, I rode my bike down to the hardware store to look for more belts, and the belts I got don't work. I just wanted an excuse to ride my bike down there. I got this. Uh-oh, I forgot to put it away. I bought this Schwinn bike at a yard sale for 20 bucks, and it's a Schwinn. What is it? Schwinn Racer. No nonsense bike. Anyway, I rode that all the way to town and got the wrong belt, but I think I have a plan. Well, I never would a million years would have believed that using a hairdryer on that would have worked, but it does. And I think even the changer mech works all right, but if it doesn't, I'm not going to fret about it. Let's see, it's not going to detect a record. All right. Well, it even cycles itself off. That's good. So the record player, I believe, is done, and I'm going to pinch it back together. That's not even a word. Put it back together again. And then I think I'm going to work in the yard a little bit. It's a beautiful day, and I don't know. I've got so many freaking stereos to work on right now. I've got 3 in here, including the one I'm working on, and then there's 2 more at the museum, and there's a 3rd coming in. So it is console season in California, or at least my part of California. All right, whatever. Google can copyright all they want. I ain't making a penny off of this, but anyway, the stereo works. Got good stereo separation on the tape input. I just want to make sure everything works before I bolt it back in because it's not easy to get it in and out of the cabinet. Whew, so we're 90% done, but not quite done. I want to do stuff like, for example, clean up these knobs. They're a little dirty. I'm going to take those off and clean them. And clean up the interior of the cabinet, even though that's absolutely ridiculous, but I want to. It just makes me feel better. Then do a final maybe polish overall on the case. And then we'll button it back up together and hopefully call it a done deal. thought I had this in the bag, but I just remembered that no, the tuning condenser for AM and shortwave is stuck. And I came back and I heated it up, and I've been gently trying to twist that back and forth, and that's plastic, so you cannot get it too hot and you can't force it too much, you'll break it. So I'm just, what I'm doing is I'm heating it up a little bit with a soldering iron around the metal here, just getting it warm, and then I'll put a little more PB Blaster on it. In fact, I'll put just a little bit more on it, and then I'll go and do something else. Right now I'm going to take the knobs off and clean those. The stuff stinks, but it works really well. It's kind of like a catalyst that goes in there and kind of loosens stuff up. So I'm hoping that'll do that, but sometimes you have to wait a few hours. Alright, so this is the most jerry-rig thing I've ever done, but I've tied up that plastic pulley with all the cord around it with tape so it doesn't come loose. And I'm protecting, kind of shielding this area from flame, and I've got my little blowtorch here. And what you want to do is kind of like, just going to heat it up right here. Alright, probably when things start smoking, it's a good time to stop. Okay, that's it. So now, I don't want to damage that spline. I'm going to put some fresh oil in there. There we go. Okay. Let me get something that's not quite so grippy. Wow, that is still really stiff. I don't know what happened there. This, whatever grease they use is turning into glue. Alright, this is why these things drive me absolutely up the damned wall sometimes. So, you know, I probably spent 2 hours recapping the radio. I spent 3 hours restringing this. Just getting that all to... Because what happened is that in me, like, loosening this all up and everything, I got everything out of alignment. So I just had to, like, restring it anyway. And, like, it just fucking took forever. Anyway, this is done. The electronics is done. The record player's done. I think I'm going to go work on the yard a little bit and then come back and button this thing up and call it done. Anyway, I'm not quite done with it yet, but I just wanted to... Not sure if you guys can tell because I'm recording on a stupid cell phone, but it sounds great. Anyway, just thought I would give you all a check-in. I'm continuing to polish the case because I want it to look absolutely perfect. Because I think when it looks perfect, it'll be absolutely stunning. In fact, it's not doing it justice filming it under these nasty-looking lights.
And the dominoes, my, Layla. Hey, after finishing 4 years of college, you're justifiably proud, right? But what about the 4 years after college? Will you also be able to look back with satisfaction, proud of what you've accomplished, confidence in a job well done? Well, this is an important consideration, for the more you feel pride and responsibility in your job, the better you'll do in it.
My generation, gladly conscripted in the war of defending any Goliath that would darken the door. Now with your genius for picking battles, it's no wonder every moment is too small. I guess time just makes fools of us all. I guess time just makes fools of us all.
Alright, folks. I know it's kind of a weird ending, but man, this thing sounds good and it looks good. Really enjoyed working on it. I have to admit something. I brought it back in here into the museum and it started blowing fuses. Had to take it out again, and there was a few capacitors I missed, and also it turns out that the beacon for FM stereo wasn't working because the equivalent of 6U8 was out. And so now I have a stereo light. See? All right. Thanks so much for watching, everybody. Until the next time something comes across my workbench, I'll see you guys later. Bye-bye.